All right, welcome everyone back to IMSH 2022, day 2 of the PRESSBOX, sponsored by both HealthySimulation.com and the Society for Simulation and Healthcare, coming together to try to do more coverage about what's happening here at the event for those that are at home, unable to attend this year, or for those that are off doing something else that's super exciting while they're here at the show. I'm so excited to be joined with the presidents, past, present, and future, kind of like the Christmas story. We've got all three here to tell us.
That could be interesting.
Share with us all the information. So we've got Bob Armstrong, who is from Eastern Virginia Medical School, Centera Center for Simulation and Immersive Learning. We've got Juli Maxworthy, University of San Francisco, and Dr. Haru Okuda, also from University of South Florida at the Campbell Center. So I appreciate you all being here with us today. First, I'd just love to hear from each of you about what you're excited about for here for IMSH 22. Bob, we'll start with you. What's exciting for you?
Well, and everybody's going to say this, but I'm excited that we're actually physically here, and that we're having an opportunity to re-energize this community and this interest. Simulation has been so incredibly important during the pandemic, and we need to continue to foster its growth and adoption throughout healthcare. So this event helps that. So I'm really excited about that.
Right, about the ability to finally come together, because I know last year we were all virtual, and so 2020 we had come together, and just right after that is when the global pandemic really began, and so to finally have a chance to come together is fantastic. Julie, about yourself, what are you excited about for here at IMSH 2022?
See all my sim peeps.
Yes.
I mean, I have missed so many people, and I didn't realize how much I missed them until I saw them, and it was like, oh my gosh, because it's been so long. And these are people I usually see several times a year at different conferences.
Right.
And that network, I mean, I've kept in touch with them, through text and what have you, or Zoom, but it's not the same than sitting down and just having a conversation.
Right, right.
And so much happens in our field with those connections.
Right, just understanding that those collisions and those opportunities to network and catch up with people, hear about their success stories. We just did a great panel with a cross section of the simulation community, and hear that even though we've been under the pressure of a global pandemic, good things are happening for simulation.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the world has figured out that we exist even more so because of this.
Brilliant.
I mean, for us to be able to pivot and be able to be right there to help with everything that needs to be done. I mean, our students are still matriculating through their programs. Everything is coming together for them. And we're finding that simulation really has a place in healthcare in every way.
Awesome, absolutely. And Haru, what are you excited about here for IMSH 22?
So you're going to hear a lot of the same theme. I have to echo, like just seeing the people, the members, the non-members that are all participating here.
And some of the new technologies in the exhibit.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. So that was the other piece I was going to go to. Is like coming to the exhibit hall and seeing all the new emerging technologies. I mean, we haven't seen this for 2 years. A lot has happened in 2 years.
Incredible amounts.
Because of the pandemic.
Right.
And I love how the companies are pushing the envelope in areas around virtual reality, augmented reality, and other ways to allow us to have a more distributed way of training.
Awesome. Well, I know we've got Bob tomorrow lined up for our XR panel, talking about how these new mixed reality technologies are really making an impression on the simulation community. So excited to have a lot of conversations about those. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Obviously, COVID has had an impact on our industry over the last 2 years, and I'd love to hear from each of you. Bob, you took the brunt force of that over the past 2 years. How did that affect the society, and what kind of changes or opportunities did you all find because we couldn't come together that you could do in other ways, or what has developed through society because of COVID? What's happened?
So it's interesting. Sometimes you just take some event needs to come along that catalyzes a change.
Yes. And
one of the things that I'm really excited about that the society has done is when we did 21 in completely virtually.
Sure.
We had a precursor event in the SimOps that was in the summer. And put that together virtually too. So we were testing it out.
Right.
We're going to continue to improve our virtual, and we'll call them time asynchronous access to what goes on at this conference. And we're thinking through, what's the right way to do that so it's efficient and effective. But we've learned an awful lot over the last couple of years about how to do that. I guess probably one of the most important things that came out of this, because we're an international organization and we would like to actually reach more of our international population, but it's hard to get here. It's costly to get here, but they can still be involved and still be productive members through the knowledge that they gain through the virtual activity, and then they might be able to get involved in other ways that would be, they would think there's no way I could ever do that, right? So that's been a real benefit of COVID. It just forced that change to have to occur.
Right, absolutely. And so, you know, when you put something in a framework, we learned this in film school, now you can actually be more creative because you know you can't do this, you know you can't do that. You have to work within these boundaries. So what can we do? And all of a sudden, you have more focus on that particular, you know, place, and you can start to create and find more solutions to it. Julie, for you, for the past year, you know, how have you seen the society been able to kind of help support the community with regards to COVID resources? You mentioned that was one of the highest click pages on the website?
Yes, absolutely. As soon as, you know, we saw this evolving, the leadership got together and we said, we've got to figure out how to be a support. So we made the page, we started the page, and people just helped us populate it with the best practices, and we were having lots of opportunities for people to gather and have conversations, and all those are recorded and available for people on the website.
Right.
But the COVID page is free to anybody.
Right.
And a lot of the other resources, because it's important that we help our community practice, because they're ultimately helping our students, they're helping our patients. I mean, there's a downstream effect by us giving access. One of the reasons, I mean, we have 1,000 more members than we did a year ago.
Right.
And that is in part.
Right, and that's the most ever, right? The
It is.
most
We're
ever
over
for membership for the online.
Yes.
Wow, incredible.
So yes, and that just shows the value people see in the organization and the value people see in the field.
Absolutely.
And that's been exciting during these very challenging times.
Right.
And we realized that we have a responsibility to provide lots of content. That's one of the reasons when we realized we couldn't do it in person, we went and offered it for free.
Right.
IMSH last year for free for our members.
Sure.
For the very reason that we wanted to make sure people could maintain access, because we knew it was so important for people to stay connected.
Right.
And they did.
Let's find the ways that we can make that happen.
Yes, and that's why we provided extended amount of time, but the content was available.
Right.
Those types of things.
So Haru, I know you've been president for all of a day now, and so
not even yet.
No, Wednesday.
Wednesday's average day. Okay, so you're negative one.
That's
So you can't really talk about the past, but maybe you could bridge us into the future. What do you see as the society's role at this point, moving forward? You know, specifically with regards to COVID and supporting the community as we kind of are still clearly dealing with now Omicron, and you know, heaven forbid we've got Zetacron or whatever's next down the pipeline. What are you seeing? You know, for your time in office as some of the things that you hope to accomplish with regards to COVID support or pandemic readiness for the future?
Well, I think what's interesting, if we reflect, you know, we often look back to the history to see what's going to happen in the future. I think, as Julie said, the resources available, how the community came together during COVID was really incredible, sharing best practices. I know many of us, you know, it was like March, April of 2020, when folks were all staying at home, many of the simulation community members were actually going into the front lines to hospitals. I know at Camels, we actually went into the hospital to run drills to help folks with donning and doffing, et cetera.
Wow.
And I would say, you know, for anybody that doesn't think simulation is important or critical, this is a critical part, it's an essential part of what we do every day. So, you know,
if I remember from SimOps correctly, you asked for volunteers.
We did.
And everyone signed up.
Yes.
Is that not, I mean, that just shows the passion, the
Yes.
commitment that simulation teams have to support the clinical practice, even though that they didn't need to be there,
Correct.
they wanted to be there.
That's right. We didn't force anybody to do it, but we said, you know, if it was just me, I mean, I'm an ER doc, so I'm sort of signed up for this by my occupation, but I said, if it's just me going in with a mannequin, that's what I'll do.
Sure.
But I asked for volunteers, everybody put their hand up.
Brilliant.
And we went in, and this is pre-vaccine and all of that. So,
right.
You know, now thinking into the future, my hope as a society is that, you know, we went SimOps live this summer, IMSH live this month, we're doing this successfully, we're doing this safely. I think we can show that we can do that. We need to start moving forward with this within the new normal.
Sure.
Right, and hopefully my wish is that COVID will go away.
Right.
But the reality is that it's probably going to stick around a little bit longer, and we can't just say, well, we're not going to do anything anymore forever.
Right.
We need to actually adjust.
Find solutions.
Find solutions. It's so important for our members and for patient safety and quality. So, you know, I think whatever comes our way, you know, before I remember it was Ebola was another one that came, and we all jumped up and we said, you know, get front in line and we'll do drills and we'll do, so whatever comes our path for simulationists, we're ready for it.
Right.
And we're going to move forward, and society's going to be here to support them.
Right.
Through, other, depending on what happens, through resources, connections, forums, whatever it takes. Very excited about it. I think the other area, since you asked specifically related to COVID,
sure,
is that we have a lot of companies really pushing the envelope in terms of new technologies or new innovations for training virtually.
Right. And
that came, as Bob mentioned, it was like we're pushed into it.
Right.
So I think the society, as subject matter experts and people that are really, they're the end users, we have to work collaboratively with our industry partners to help define what that technology is going to look like, how it's going to be integrated, so that when the next pandemic or as this continues, we have really solid training and educational technologies that can complement the kind of work that we do in debriefing and simulation and experiential learning.
Sure. And so, I think simulationists are early adopters already. They're ready to take risks. They're ready to bring in new technologies. They're ready to kind of evolve on the spot. They're really wear many hats, and they're willing to be champions in terms of sharing technologies and methodologies with others, even though they might get some pushback from them. So I think if any crowd and community has been prepared and most ready to help answer the call, it's certainly the simulation community when we're talking about healthcare education and patient safety initiatives and outcomes over time. So, okay, well, I've got you here. I think it's also really important that we think about, step back and think about the bigger picture, not only about COVID, but the industry as a whole, in terms of where it is in its place in time at this point. We're seeing a lot of calls for things like a National Patient Safety Board out there. We're seeing a lot of investments being made from Silicon Valley into simulation companies with money that this industry has never seen invested in it before. We're seeing a lot of groups that have now become more aware of what simulation is. We did a simulation survey. We shared the results about that through healthysimulation.com. One of the questions that we saw, a massive increase from C-suite leadership and deans or other kind of leadership of institutions and hospitals about the simulation program because of COVID. And I think that has a long-term lasting impact with regards to not only kind of support, but also investment and belief that this program can continue to do not only pandemic readiness, but other things that the hospital or these educational groups might be thinking about in the future, just like these remote and distance-based learning technologies. So I'd love to hear from each of you about where you think the society can go in terms of helping support this conversation to a broader, wider context outside of the folks that are here, because you're preaching to the choir here. Everyone here is signed up on the dotted line, right? But what about those folks that are outside the society, and how has the society, in the past 2 years, how has it helped them? What do you all think the society can help to do to kind of bring about more awareness at a larger level? We'll go ahead and start with Bob.
So, yeah,
Great question.
That's a really, really good question, and the interesting thing is we're thinking about this. Okay,
we're working on it.
Interesting that an organization like ours, has gone through a number of different phases as we've matured to where we are today.
Sure.
And it started out about just access and awareness to vendors and what was going on, so that we could figure out what we should be purchasing to fulfill our educational mission. Now we're a big enough organization and have enough reach to where we need to help shape that, what those technologies are.
Right.
Okay. And we don't directly train anyone that is that's in a hospital or a student at an institution. Yeah, we do through our certifications, but not through in the same thing. We're not point of train. We'll say that.
Yeah.
But we do have we have all these people that we can bring together, and we can shape a conversation about, well, what are the gaps? What are the things that keep people up at night? What are the things that we want to be able to do? And if you can get to that without being restrained by the present, you can start to understand what needs to be invested in and what we might be able to actually have on the shelf to purchase 5 to 10 years from now.
Right.
So it's an onerous process, because it's really, really hard to get people to think about what they need without thinking about what they need today.
Right.
And especially when we can't really necessarily predict that future. But it takes that sort of an engagement to gather that information, and then it becomes a freely available analysis that any of our vendor friends can take and decide that they're going to solve some of these gaps because of that.
Right. And so certainly we have the talent and the experience and the knowledge here to help fashion the future technologies that will help the widest audience. And I think once you have technologies with even more input from users, they become more accessible, they become easier to adopt, they become more useful in terms of outcomes, and so it just leads into a snowball effect. Julie, your thoughts on the society and expanding the message out there?
Well, we have our corporate roundtable, which you're well aware of.
Yeah.
And we have a member from the corporate roundtable actually serve on our board, which I think for a lot of organizations is unusual.
Yeah.
Amara Patel has just come off, and Ryan Ribiera is coming on board.
Right.
And that access to those folks has made a big difference in our conversations at the board level.
Right.
We see there's more and more opportunity to work with our partners.
Right.
Because together, figuring out, because as you mentioned, in the early days, we were given this equipment with, very little input.
Right.
And we made the best we could. And it's more about the skins.
Yeah.
It's more than that. I mean, there's so much that we can do. And
Right.
so I think the corporate roundtable structure that we have should be, hopefully we'll be expanding it more and finding other ways for us to help each other.
Right.
We always have to keep it fair and maybe, give it opportunities
Sure.
for everybody.
Right.
But there's so much potential. And there's also a lot of potential. We've been talking a lot at the board level about how we can, another way to impact what happens in our field is legislatively.
Absolutely.
And how to move that dial
Right.
is a challenge.
Right.
Cause
Yeah, if we look at the aviation simulation industry, which has been, really kind of fully adopted for many, many years now, decades, that, they have the NTSB, they have the FAA, and then they have groups that help to liaison for lobbying efforts, for PR campaigns, for kind of legislative improvements, to be able to help and assist. And so certainly I think that needs to be a part of the conversation here. Hopefully the PRESSBOX can help to kind of bring about some of these new kind of industry-wide conversations at different levels of within the industry. However, for yourself, maybe outside of the technology and the vendors themselves, but how do you feel that the society might be able to help to also further that message out there?
So I'll expand on what Julie was talking
Sure.
about. So we have, at the board level, been talking about advocacy.
Sure,
And as you mentioned, I think over the last 20 years, we've done a really great job of pulling more people, getting interested and passionate about what we do. But one of the challenges that, we are, I mentioned this earlier today in a similar conversation, where we've all drunk the Kool-Aid, but we're all sitting around the Kool-Aid talking about it amongst each other. Right. And we really need to pull in the decision makers. And we've had Meet the CEO events at IMSH, where we're pulling in hospital decision makers, CEOs, CFOs, which is a good start. Right. But as I reflect on what really gets momentum is at the federal government or state government level, where you can incentivize either policy or really funding to support these types of efforts. And so
bringing in some of that executive leadership to see the opportunities so that they too can see them like directly as opposed to kind of indirectly from word of mouth or what they're hearing.
Right. So we're as a society, we hope to be working in that part of advocacy that I don't think we've done well enough over the coming couple of years, and really drive that message to the big decision makers at the federal and potentially state level. I think one of the most unfortunate things that happened, where we thought we were getting momentum in simulation, when HRQ, they had grants around simulation, and then all the funding was pulled. Right? And so, where we thought we were exactly. So, obviously now we as a society, I think it's part of our
to find those funds, to find that support, and make it happen.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the sentiments that you've shared with us here today, and I just think that it would be appropriate for to take one moment to honor Chad Epps, who we unfortunately lost unexpectedly, and are all missing dearly. And maybe we could each just take one moment and just share a funny story or a memory of Chad, to memory his honor, that you could say on camera.
Yeah, all my stories, I don't really need to tell them. Chad was a great guy. He was an awful lot of fun, and I always looked forward to being around him, just like so many other people did. But yeah, he was just such a fun guy to be with, so really good at his job, and such a passionate supporter of simulation.
Right, absolutely, Julie.
So Chad and I have worked together over many years, in particular defining excellence. I actually spoke to him on the evening of the 17th of December. we were meeting weekly to discuss the book, and because it was around the holidays, I had asked him, because he always sets up at least 2 or 3 Christmas trees in his house.
Oh.
So I said, how was the Christmas tree going? He goes, well, the girls want me to put another one up. I said, how many are up to now? And he said, that will be my 5th. Now he had a big house. Yes.
5th.
Yeah, 5th. So I said, oh, you are such a great dad. He just, his girls were the center of his universe, and he was like a little brother I never had, and it just seems different.
Right.
And
such a light.
Yes, and it was unfortunate due to COVID, because one of his children got it, that they weren't able to be here for the event. But we've recorded it. He was just, and I asked him how he became he was so good with all different kinds of people. And he says, I think it was because in high school and the early part of college, he worked in Walmart in customer service.
Oh.
And he believed that taught him how to deal with all different kinds of people.
Yeah,
and he came from
company
very
ethos there is
yes,
all about.
and he came from very humble beginnings, and he was just all around. What you saw in Chad was what there was, his essence.
Sure.
And so I felt very happy when I saw the video when it was done. It was like, that's Chad.
Yeah.
Did you feel that same way?
I mean, it was so many moments of him smiling and enjoying life,
that's
and he was always like that.
That was
yeah. Haru, for yourself, a fun memory of Chad?
So, Chad and I met, I think it was like 2003.
Yeah.
And we started our simulation career together. So he was a fellow at Mount Sinai.
Oh, wow.
I was a junior attending.
Okay.
He helped so much. We had to learn on those old school mannequins. It was at Adam Levine's shop at Mount Sinai. They had the old Medis.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about those original ones, like to get them hypotensive, you had to calculate the physiologic, pull off fluids and all this stuff. And Chad was right there to guide me through it.
Yeah.
And he would
a mentor.
He taught a lot of our residents as well. So I really appreciated him then.
Right.
And then fast forward 2018, I had a new job at Camels, and they were doing an interprofessional education day later that summer, and I just remember apparently they said they asked Chad to be one of the keynotes because of his patient safety and simulation and presidency.
Sure.
And apparently he said, oh well, Haru's going to be there. I'll do it for free, no honorarium required. And then and I was like, man, Chad, you're still making me look good going to my new job.
Years later.
He always had a
and it was because of him that I got to meet the president of the university because she was there. And so just
always supporting.
Such a giving person.
Yeah. My memory of him is just meeting him on the showroom floor, and he just gave you the time to listen.
Yes.
And I feel like Chad really heard you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And when he was in the room,
person.
and he would build consensus by listening to everyone, coming up with a plan that met everyone's needs, and he was just such an effective leader. Had a chance to work with him just for a short period of time at GNSH, helping with the Global Network for Simulation and Healthcare. Also met with him over Zoom the day before he passed away. I called Lucas that next day. I was devastated to hear. It was just. So it's been really hard for everyone I know in the community to lose such a champion, and I'm so glad that we're honoring his memory with the new lectureship. I believe that's fantastic, and that Paul was able to help. So with that, we want to just thank all the presidents here and all the members of the society for really continuing to push hard out there and make simulation a success story, even though it was during a global pandemic. We really appreciate everyone's efforts, especially of the board, for their volunteer hours to help make this happen. So thank you to all three of you, and so thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, Lance.